you guys will probably make it too. But there's some beautiful truths here in verses 12 and 13. Like I said, we are sort of in a transition in Galatians. So what we're moving away from is what could be called the doctrinal section of the book. Okay, so he has spent the last big portion of the letter defending why we should believe that justification through faith is what salvation is all about. That's what the entire letter is, right? And he moves through several different sections as he talks about that. And the last section he talked about were, here are reasons to believe that this is true. What he's getting ready to move into is kind of the application portion of the letter. Like, here's what our life should look like as a result of that truth, okay? And so as we see this little bridge, what most people will say is like this section, verses 12 all the way to 20, are kind of ministry oriented. Okay? They very much focus in on what it's like to share the gospel with others. And a lot of times pastors will bring out that this has a lot to do with what pastoral ministry practically looks like. But I would say that it's deeper than that, okay? Because all of us have been called to be ministers of the gospel, right? Every single one of us has been called to share the gospel with the world. That's not just a pastoral ministry kind of thing. And so when I looked at this, what I saw was that really this shows us the nature of what our life should be like if we have a heart for the lost, right? And so next week when we look at verses 13 through 20, we'll see some of the pitfalls that happen when it comes to sharing the gospel and some of the things that we need to be prepared for as we do that. Today, I just want to look at what our hearts should be like as we move forward. So I'm going to give you a gist, and then we'll pray and kind of walk through. But here's what we're looking at today. Oh, if I turn this on, then I'll click better. So if we truly have this ministering heart, okay, if our heart truly longs to share the gospel with others, then our life should be like this, okay? They should be truth portraying, culture crossing, and moment seizing. Okay, truth portraying, culture crossing, and moment seizing. I know those all sound kind of weird, but I'll break them down for us. Let's pray. Lord, you are so incredibly good to us. I thank you that we were able to have this Christmas season. I thank you that it's not done yet. That we can continue to worship you, we can continue to praise you for who you are and what you're doing all around us every day because you chose to come and die for us. Father, I do pray, please, open our hearts to hear your word today. Just get rid of any distractions that might be stopping us or in our own hearts. Any burdens that we brought into this place that we're not willing to lay down. I pray that before we even open your word right now, that you convict us of those. That we would lay them at your feet. And that we'd be prepared to hear what you have for us today. And Jesus, as always, I do ask, please push me out of the way. I don't want to be one of those distractions. Because I know I need to hear these words. Even though, I already talked about them once today. And it hit me then, and I know it's going to hit me again. So please, 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 make this real in my life too. It's in Jesus' most wonderful and precious name I pray. Amen. So I just want to kind of walk through this. So the first thing that we see is that as we go out and we have this heart for people around us, we should live lives that are truth portraying. So if you look at verse 12, what Paul opens with is a statement that actually is kind of similar. He makes other statements like this in his other letters, and they're kind of jarring. Okay, a lot of people struggle with these kinds of statements that Paul makes. So look at what he says in verse 12. Very beginning, just the first part of the verse, he says, "Brothers, I entreat you," which is like, I beg you, right? I beg you, please, become as I am. And out of context, that verse might seem just sort of arrogant, okay? I mean, Jesus can say, become as I am, and I get that. I relate to that because he's Jesus, okay? He's perfect. But Paul was a man, okay? Just like us. There was nothing special about Paul other than the fact that God used him, okay? And so when you look at this, it does kind of have that reek of arrogance when we look at this, like, how could he say something like this? And it's not the only time but he says stuff like this either, right? Until you look at the entire context of what he's saying. Okay, remember, what is the entire book of Galatians about? What has he been saying from the very beginning? Salvation is through grace. Okay, that's what the entire letter is about. Okay, the entire letter is saying it's not about what you do. It's not about who you are. It's all about, have you been changed by grace? Okay, that's the context under which he says this: become as I am. Because when I came to you, I wasn't perfect. Okay, I was a broken man bringing you the message of grace. In fact, what we find out, and we will even see it here in the next verse, if you want to like cheat and jump ahead to verse 13, you will see it. When Paul showed up in this area of Galatia, the reason he was where he was for as long as he was because he was sick, okay? Or hurt, or something was wrong with him, okay? And so we'll get a little more into that in a second, but when he showed up, he wasn't feeling good, okay? And you guys all know from your personal experience that when you are not feeling good, when you're sick, and when you're tired, that is always when you are at your very best, right? No, right? Like if you want someone to really get a good look into maybe what's really going on in your heart, have them visit you when you're sick, okay? Because all those filters that we typically put on, they just sort of go away, right? You guys know, like you have been around people when they're tired, they say all kinds of stuff that they would never say if they had slept enough, right? And so they met Paul in that context. Okay? He wasn't at his best. He wasn't feeling strong and energized. He was sick, okay? But still yet he's able to say, I want you to be like I was when I came to you. Because even at his worst, his life was still just about Jesus, okay? And that's what he's getting at, right? He had been transformed by this experience of grace, and it became everything. His entire life was all about who Jesus was. And he says, that's what I want for you, okay? Become as I am, because I am just about Jesus. It's not about me. It's not about who I am or what I do. It's all about who he is and what he has done in my life. You guys saw me at my worst, and I still just want to point you to Christ, because even at my worst, he was everything. And in your worst, it's the same. Okay? And like what hit me most when I thought about this is if we want to go out sharing the gospel, we can never do that until that gospel has changed us for real, right? Because if we go out trying to point people to the truth, but we haven't let the truth change us, how effective are we going to be in communicating that? Well, we can talk and talk and talk and talk, but it doesn't mean anything to the people that see us at our worst when they see what life is really like for us, right? Let me just illustrate it this way. Most of you guys realize that for whatever reason, I have coached several small athletic teams, okay? Aubrey was on one that I actually really enjoyed because I love basketball. Basketball is my thing. I've also coached a lot of baseball, and that is not my thing, okay? Like why they allowed me to do that was just because they were desperate, all right? But I've done it several times. And one thing that always cracked me up is like sometimes, and Gary has been with me at every one of these teams, we would have little kids who would maybe say and do things that they should not do, okay? And one of the things that has always been very entertaining to me is, in a very sad and depressing way, is when parents would yell at their kids when they would, like, say a bad word, okay? Like, I've told you not to use that language, right? But those same parents are the ones that, on the sidelines of every single game, are yelling all kinds of profanity during these little league baseball games, all right? And we now realize something, right? Yes, that child has probably heard their parents say, please, don't talk like that. But what have they heard more from their parent? That they talk like that, right? So the parent said the right thing to the kid, don't cuss. But the parent lived the life that said, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyway, right? And so when we go out sharing the gospel, if we say this should change your life and it should be everything, but they see our hearts because they see who we are and they don't see the truth, will they believe the message? Not from our example, right? And so we have that burden. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. We have that incredible privilege of being ambassadors for Christ, being heirs for Christ, with this incredible responsibility to let that change us first, right? We go out transformed by the gospel so we can point people to the truth. So we portray the truth in our lives. But also we see that when he went out, he also was culture crossing. I want to explain this. Look at verse 12. I'll read the entire verse. That last portion, though, we're not going to address today, and I'll explain why. So he said, brothers, I entreat you, become as I am. Because I also have become as you are. You did me no wrong. Now, that section there, we're going to put that on a shelf. I'll pick that up next week, okay, but we're going to deposit that one. I just want to focus on that second part of the sentence. Become as I am, because I have become as you are. Now, Paul also makes these kinds of statements frequently in his letters, and they can also be misconstrued and misinterpreted, okay? When he went to these people, they were pagan worshipers of false gods. So when Paul says that he went out and he became as they were, does he mean that he also started worshiping these false gods? No. Okay, he did not become as they were in their sin. Okay, we have to understand that, because a lot of times people will say that, like, hey, if we really want to reach the world, we need to go do what the world is doing. Okay, so if the world's going to strip clubs, then we also need to just go to the strip clubs, participate in that, and we'll hand out. We're not going to give dollars. We'll give tracts, right? No. Okay, nobody laughed. That was funny. Come on, that was funny. What are you guys doing? I can even see behind the mask. Nobody was laughing. My goodness. I just came up with that on the spot, and it was a good one. You're welcome. Okay, but that's not what we're called for. That's not what we're called to do. What? It was still funny. Become as I am. Right? No, I can't actually say that. You said you were insulted?
No, I said I was in shock. That was
Okay. Sorry, sometimes we need a little bit of shock to see if you're actually listening to what's going on.
Will you be doing any more of that today?
I'm not sure what the context of that question is, so we're going to just keep going, because that might make me feel a little uncomfortable. So anyway, when he went out, what we need to understand is what he did is he didn't go to them saying, become like my culture. Okay, the Judaizers were coming in. Okay, this is what the context of this whole letter is they come in and they said, listen, yeah, you need Jesus, but really to be a Christian, what do you need? You got to become Jewish, right? You got to go through the ceremonial laws. You got to go through circumcision. That needs to happen for you too. And if you do that, and you do that appropriately, and you believe in Jesus, you can check all these boxes, then your salvation is real. Paul says, when I came in, I didn't do that. Okay, I didn't come in saying, I need you to become more Jewish. I came in saying, listen, I'm a broken person who needs Jesus, just like you. And that's the transformation that we need, okay? He didn't try and change their culture. He tried to show them the need for their hearts to be changed, right? And so when we go out, we have to remember this. And we know it, in our hearts, we realize this. Being American is not the passageway to becoming a Christian, right? We get that. Though for years and years and years, people kind of associated, if you're an American, you're a Christian, because that's just what it means, right? America is a Christian nation. Was that ever really the case, though? No, being American was never what made you Christian, okay? Becoming someone who believed in Jesus, who happened to live in America, that's what made you a Christian, okay? But as we go out, we have to understand, we're not looking to make people like us, right? We're trying to point people to Jesus, who we should want to be like as well. But sometimes I think when we go out, that's not where our heart is, okay? I've had people tell me, hey, make sure you share the gospel with so-and-so, because that's the kind of people that we want in this church. Right? That's hard. Okay, that's hard, because the kind of people that we want in this church are the kind of people who need Jesus. Okay, it doesn't matter who they are or what they're like. We want people to see Jesus. We don't want them to become more acceptable to us. Right? And so as we go out, we're not trying to transform them into little versions of us. We're trying to be transformed into little versions of Jesus. And we want to carry that message to the entire world. So I didn't go out trying to change your culture. Trying to show you that you need a change of heart, right? We cross the culture. We go places that might not be comfortable for us because they need Jesus. Okay, I can tell you for sure, if you guys went and hung out with some of my friends that I grew up with in Belarus, a lot of what they would do would seem really strange to you, okay? They're not weirder than you guys, okay? They're just as weird as you are, right? But what they do would seem different. But do they love the Lord? Absolutely, okay? And I want the level of commitment that I've seen in so many of their lives, right? But they don't do things the same way we do things. That's okay. That's perfectly okay, right? We're not going to try and make little us. We're trying to show people Jesus, okay? So we go out and we have transformed hearts. We're portraying the truth. We're crossing cultures, and we're seizing moments, right? If you look at verse 13, we get a nice little context of why Paul even was in those portions of Galatia sharing the gospel in the first place. Look at verse 13, he says this. You know that it was because of a bodily ailment that I preached the gospel to you at first. You know it was because of a bodily ailment that I preached the gospel to you at first. Now, a lot of speculation has gone into what exactly was wrong with Paul that led to him saying things like this. And we don't know exactly. Okay, we can kind of draw some conclusions. We know that when he was traveling through Galatia, he probably got sick. Okay, a lot of people think it was maybe some form of malaria or something like that he had. Either way, it seems like it probably affected his eyes. Okay, that seems to be the common consensus. And you see that evidence for that. Actually, if you just cheat and go down a little bit further, he says that you cared so much for me that you were willing to even pluck out your eyes and give them to me if you thought that would have helped. Okay, so it seems pretty evident that Paul had some kind of vision problem. Okay, And so we realized that the reason that he was where he was because something happened to him that he did not expect, did not want to happen, right? Had not planned for. So the reason he stayed, the ways that he stayed, were not things that he planned for, just things that happened to him. But when he ended up there, instead of just sulking in his misery and saying, well, I guess I can't go on a missionary journey anymore because now I'm sick, what did he realize? Opportunity. Okay, God sent me here. He sent me on this mission. Just like every single one of you have been sent on a mission every single day. My goal in my life is to share the gospel. That's what Paul would say. That's what we should say. Like, our goal is to share the gospel. So we are in this place, even though we weren't expecting it. We know that we're in this place on purpose. Because I was there, there's a bodily ailment that got me there, but guess what? I was with you. So I preached to you. Because that's what I was called to do, right? And so, two things. And I've said both of these things before. Maybe not super recently, but if you've ever heard me preach, there's a good chance you've heard me say these two things. But there are things that I frequently need reminded of. So I want to make sure I share this today. Number one, we need to understand this. You might not be where you want to be right now. But I can guarantee you that you are exactly where he's placed you for this moment, right? You might not be where you want to be. You might not like where you're at. But you're exactly where he wants you right now. Does that mean he's going to keep you there forever? Maybe not. Maybe some of you are like, I really hope not, right? But he put you there on purpose, right? You might hate your job right now, okay? It might be a real struggle to do the things that you're called to do every single day. But can God use you in that place? Yeah, okay, he has a purpose. He has a plan. And that second thing up there is no such thing then as wasted time unless you waste it, okay? And that's something that, like, always hits me. There's no such thing as wasted time unless you waste it. God has given you something every single day, right? And I can tell you this because we've seen, I know we're so tired of saying 2020 is a flipped upside down kind of year, okay? We get it. We understand it's been awful, okay? But can God still do stuff in 2020? He has been, right? He has continued. Did we have to change some things? Yeah, but that's okay because we saw opportunities and we did things different because we were in a different kind of time and God still used those things, okay? VP was just sharing with me before the service that the whole youth conference, college conference that he went to was nothing like it usually is, right? Like, it's usually more campuses coming together. They just had, the one campus that came together, but 5 people still got saved. Did God feel hindered by the fact that things were different? No. Okay? We never, ever in the history of Providence have had 2 services consistently like we've had. Okay? Never, ever, ever, ever have we had that happen. But we've been doing it for a long time now, right? Is God using those things? Yes, because there's a need, and we decided, we're just going to try and meet that need, okay? We could have ignored it. We could have just said, we're just going to just see what happens and go with it. We didn't, though, because life was different. He gave us the opportunity. We're going to use that opportunity he gave us, right? Wherever God has you right now, whatever you're going through, I can promise you he has something he wants you to do in that moment. Use that. Don't let it pass you by. Okay? So just a couple quick takeaways for you this morning. And look, they're the same points I already hit. So if you want to fall asleep for a little bit before the invitation, you can do that, right? So just remember these things. If we have a ministering heart, if that's who we are, if we really want to go out sharing the gospel first, we have to let that gospel transform us. We have to be truth portrayed. So we have to think about that. How real is this grace transformation in our lives, regardless of our circumstances, okay? Regardless of what is going on. Paul was not at his best, and he still showed them Christ because Christ was everything, right? Second, we need to go out crossing cultures, okay? How willing are we to go to people, regardless of where they are, regardless of how comfortable or uncomfortable that makes us, for the sake of Christ? Guys, there are people in this community, I guarantee, that live lives that make you really, really uncomfortable, okay? There are people in this community who live lives that are hard, okay? That are sad, that are devastating, and going into those settings, it's hard. But does God still want us to go there? He does, okay? There's a lot of times, like in church ministry, we will do things that you don't like, okay? That's just the reality. There will be times when maybe we sing songs that you don't like, or we go and do certain types of ministry that you're not really a fan of. But we do those things because ministry isn't about you, right? Ministry is about meeting needs for all kinds of different people, which means sometimes we have to go and do stuff that we're not particularly fans of, Yeah, I can tell you, because Melissa and I talk about this all the time, there are certain things that I love to do that she just thinks is absolutely ridiculous, right? And there are things that she loves to do that I'm like, I just don't get it, right? But we do both of those things because, well, we love each other, right? And if we are going to be a church that loves people, we're going to have to be willing to do the same kinds of things. Like, maybe you don't get why we put cookies in little boxes for police officers, but they like it. So we do it for them, right? Maybe you don't understand why we have youth activities that just seem weird, but they like it. So we do it because we're trying to show them Jesus, right? Things won't always make sense to you. Things won't always be comfortable for you, but we don't worry about that because we're not trying to make people like you. We're trying to make people like Jesus, right? And so we got to be willing. Are we going to cross cultures for the sake of Christ? And number 3, are we going to seize the moments that we're given? Okay, those two truths that I pointed out just a second ago, realize that this day, where you're at, is exactly where he needs you. So don't waste the time he's given you. He can use it. Okay? That's verses 12 and 13, and that's why I did not keep going. Okay? Let's pray. Father, thank you so much. Thank you for your amazing grace. Thank you that this is true. That we have an opportunity every day to be your hands and feet. And I just pray that we would. Lord, forgive me for where I know I don't let this truth transform me as much as it should. Open my eyes to see you today, to be used by you today. It's in Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen. What are we going to sing?